In Port Charles, a new week dawns under a cloud of fear and unfinished business, and it is Harrison Chase who decides that chaos will no longer dictate the terms. After too many hours replaying every misstep, every ignored warning and every quiet plea brushed aside, Chase walks into Monday with a single priority sharpening in his mind: bring Willow home. Not as an officer chasing another case file, but as a man who has already lost too much and refuses to stand by as someone he loves pays the price for other people's secrets. The department may see a delicate operation with incomplete intel, but Chase sees a pattern in the violence, a careful design in Willow's disappearance that tells him this abduction was never random. Every lead that fizzled, every witness that hesitated, now feels like part of a deliberate network, and he begins to map it out with grim precision. Instead of waiting for bureaucracy to catch up, Chase draws his own blueprint. He retraces Willow's last known hours, isolates the handful of people who had access to her routines and vulnerabilities, and reconstructs the emotional pressure points that made her such an effective target. He knows the kidnapper wants leverage, not a body, and that insight shapes everything: the choice of intermediaries, the manipulation of digital traces, the staged security failures that made her vanish without a scream. Chase's plan is not built on bravado, but on discipline and empathy, on understanding that Willow's captor is counting on panic, on rushed raids and sloppy assumptions. So he moves the opposite way. He proposes a controlled leak to flush out communication channels, pushes for quiet surveillance instead of spectacle, and configures the rescue as a surgical strike instead of a public crusade. He is careful, methodical, relentless, and beneath all that, quietly terrified that one miscalculation will break the woman whose life has already been carved up by loss. As Chase digs deeper, the investigation begins to mirror an older story that most people in Port Charles have politely packaged away as a tragedy of the past. Files he pulls, testimonies he hears, and whispers he never expected to hear again all circle around the same name: Nathan. The man whose badge number Chase wears as a reminder. The man whose absence carved a permanent hollow in the city's police department and in the hearts of those who loved him. Up until now, Chase has honored Nathan in broad strokes, respecting his memory, trying to live up to an impossible example. But as this case takes shape, Chase finds himself pulled into the details of the life he stepped into when he arrived in town, details that have never mattered more. He studies the old reports, the way Nathan handled informants, the quiet compassion buried between clinical lines, the risks he took and the ones he refused. What begins as routine research shifts into something more intimate, a confrontation with a standard of courage and loyalty that feels uncomfortably close to what Chase is trying to achieve for Willow. By the time Thursday arrives, Chase is no longer just running a manhunt. He is standing in the long shadow of the man he replaced. Through the eyes of those who knew Nathan best, Chase begins to fill in the gaps. Stories told in passing, scars that never quite healed, pieces of advice Nathan left behind without knowing who would need them next. Each recollection forces Chase to measure his instincts against a legacy he never asked to inherit. Nathan fought for the people he loved until it cost him everything. Now Chase must decide how far he is willing to go before the line between righteous risk and reckless sacrifice disappears. The rescue strategy for Willow becomes more than a tactical operation. It becomes a test of whether Chase has learned from the past or is doomed to repeat it. He sharpens his plan with those lessons in mind, vowing to protect Willow without turning her suffering into another chapter in a cycle of heroism that always demands blood. While Chase is busy living at the intersection of duty and obsession, another storm is gathering in a quieter corner of Port Charles. For Brooke Lynn, Monday's shocking news hits like a physical blow, shattering her fragile sense of hard-won stability. Whether it comes in the form of a call she never wanted to answer, a revelation about her family's compromises, or a threat that claws its way out of the past, the impact is the same. The world she and Chase have fought to rebuild starts to tremble. The carefully balanced promise of a normal life, marriage built on trust, a home no longer poisoned by corporate schemes and manipulation, suddenly feels naive. Old vulnerabilities resurface. Doubts she thought she buried when she chose her husband and their future claw their way back into her thoughts, whispering that happiness in Port Charles is always on borrowed time. Yet it is precisely in the wake of that devastation that Wednesday draws a new line in her story. Shaken but unbroken, Brooke Lynn discovers that this time, she does not have to navigate the fallout alone or armor herself in bravado and stubborn independence. The same man who is racing against the clock to find Willow is also the man who refuses to let Brooke Lynn collapse under the weight of what she has learned. The marriage that once terrified her because of its vulnerability now becomes her anchor. Instead of letting her spiral into guilt, fear, or the old temptation to sabotage what she loves before someone else can take it away, Chase offers something quieter and stronger: consistency. He shows up. He listens. He steadies her when her instincts tell her to bolt or to fight fire with fire. In choosing to lean on him, Brooke Lynn makes an equally daring move. She rejects the generational script of surviving alone and lets trust, not fear, dictate her next step. Their stories, unfolding in parallel over the week, are bound by the same undercurrent. How much of yourself are you willing to risk for the people you love, and what kind of legacy will that choice leave behind? For Chase, the answer lies not in chasing glory, but in proving that he can outthink the cruelty holding Willow hostage without sacrificing his soul or his marriage in the process. For Brooke Lynn, the question is whether she can hold her ground beside a man who is constantly walking toward danger and still believe in a future that is not defined by loss. As clues tighten around Willow's location and the ghosts of Nathan's sacrifice press in on Chase's conscience, the emotional stakes rise just as sharply as the tactical ones. Every hour that passes threatens to turn hope into regret, love into collateral damage. By week's end, nothing in Port Charles feels simple. The search for Willow is no longer just about one missing woman. It exposes fractures in systems that were supposed to protect her, and resurrects memories of a fallen officer whose influence still shapes choices made long after his last day on duty. Chase is pushed to confront whether he is honoring that legacy or letting it haunt him into repeating fatal patterns. Brooke Lynn is forced to decide whether shocking revelations will drive her back into self-destructive instincts or push her to deepen her reliance on the one person who refuses to abandon her. Their marriage, once a bright spot in a city accustomed to grief, becomes a battlefield and a sanctuary at the same time. And as the week closes, the sense lingers that rescue, when it comes, will not only decide Willow's fate, it will redraw the emotional map of everyone tied to her, testing just how far love, loyalty, and the courage to change can truly go in a town that never forgets its dead and never stops demanding more from the living. Along the way, small choices start to matter in ways no one anticipated. Chase turns down an aggressive raid proposal that might have satisfied public pressure but risked Willow's life, and that refusal earns him quiet criticism from those who see numbers, not faces. Brooke Lynn, staring down the fallout of Monday's revelation, chooses not to retaliate with a headline or a song or a scandal, but to protect what is hers with a sharpened clarity that surprises even her. In their private moments, the weight of Willow's disappearance settles over their home like a second silence, and both of them feel the tug of different loyalties. Chase is pulled toward the field, toward the shadowy edges of Port Charles where victims disappear. Brooke Lynn is pulled toward the center of their life together, afraid that every time the badge calls, it drags another piece of him away. The tension between those pulls does not explode this week, but it hums beneath every shared glance, a promise and a warning. If this rescue goes wrong, nothing between them will ever be the same. And threaded through it all is Nathan's unseen presence, not as a ghost to be literally resurrected, but as a measure. The more Chase learns about the man he replaced, the more he understands that heroism in this town is rarely clean and never free. Nathan died believing that some sacrifices were worth it. Chase is beginning to see the other side of that narrative, the widows and children left behind, the partners who wake up every day wondering if the badge will demand their hearts next. Consciously or not, he starts to shape his plan to save Willow in defiance of that old myth. That victory in Port Charles must always be written in tragedy. Whether he succeeds or fails, this week marks a turning point. Chase is no longer content to be a substitute for someone else's hero. He is determined to become the man who can bring Willow home and still walk back through his own front door, into the arms of the woman who chose him, without leaving yet another life shattered in his wake. That determination, burning against the darkness closing in, is what gives this chapter its dangerous, aching promise. That for once, love might not have to lose in order for justice to win.